if you hear a little maybe background noise, it's probably just them like working in here. That's the only thing I'm kind of navigating, but everything's good, man. How about you?
I'm all right. I mean, I got out of bed, so shoot, it could be a lot worse. I mean, over
Yeah.
here in Tampa, things are moving. I mean, obviously, the more that you find work out here, stuff just starts to move faster for you. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah.
So I'm kind of just happy with where life is headed right now. I've picked up a lot more film opportunities. I'm a big film person.
That's what's
So
up,
finally
man.
cracking into that, cracking into different sets, cracking into different commercials. So I'm just blessed and happy that I'm finally starting to get into it.
That's dope, man. That's dope. Well, I'm
A lot of
keep
editing.
doing it.
I definitely will. A lot of editing is
Oh, sure.
first off, I definitely wanted to thank you just for taking like your time for to do this because I didn't even know if you were gonna say yes. And I know you might be already used to how certain people that are into sports and into baseball in general, like know who you are. Like I just had no clue that you were going to agree to this. So I know this is fairly new as well, the Pick Apart Pod. I I don't know where it could go, but I know if I put my mind to anything, I could take it really far. And I'm
Mm.
starting to enjoy just the process of being in front of the camera, actually talking to people, meeting them for them. So just thank you
Yeah.
for doing this, and I'm excited to know more about you. And I
Yeah,
wanted to
no,
say
no problem at all. Happy to
that
do it, man.
my mom doesn't really know sports that well, right? And when I told her that when I came over for Thanksgiving to record the video, I told her I was like, "Mom, I'm basically at the Stephen A. Smith of baseball's house." And I was slightly freaking out, only just because I was very just grateful for the opportunity that you gave me. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Nah, I appreciate you, man. Just anytime get opportunity to obviously meet new people. That was kind of our first time working together. And that's always a blessing to be able to have those types of opportunities, man. And hopefully we can continue the conversation, keep doing some stuff together. And I'm excited to be on here talking with you.
Mhm. And where did you actually grow up? I know only a little bit about you because we used to go to the same church, but where did you actually grow up?
Yeah, yeah. No, I grew up in San Diego, man. I grew up in San Diego, and I moved out to Tampa around 2011 when I was playing in the minor leagues. But yeah, I grew up in Southern California.
So it was straight Cali to Tampa. There's no like other places.
No, I went to school in Vegas,
Okay.
in
UNLV.
Nevada, and then yeah, UNLV, and then once I got drafted, I was kind of like all over the place, especially during the season. Off season, I always spent my off seasons pretty much in Southern California, and whether it be San Diego or Los Angeles, and then once 2010 hit or 2011 hit, my third year after playing minor league ball, I met my now wife, who was someone I met during my third season of baseball in Tampa. She was going to USF,
Oh
and
shoot.
saw how big Tampa was as far as a baseball community, and decided to take the leap to move out here, and it's been great ever since.
Did she take you around Tampa, I guess? Like was she like your first person to actually like show you around the area?
Yeah, she was, and I wasn't really familiar with Tampa. Only familiar with just playing in the city. Hadn't really gone out much. Hadn't really done any sightseeing until I kind of met her, and that's where I kind of fell in love with the city. Is just being able to see some of those things that she took me around, and maybe without that, I wouldn't be here today.
Mhm. Oh shoot. Did you guys meet at church or just baseball?
No, we met actually in her hometown in West Palm Beach, and that's where my spring training was for the St. Louis Cardinals. And she had come to a game one day. Not too many people are in the stands, and obviously was like visually attracted to her. And we kind of met through Facebook we met through Facebook after the game and all that stuff. So it was really cool how we kind of initiated kind of meeting, and I actually never met her in person until a couple weeks after that.
Oh wow.
And she was finishing up school at USF, and obviously I knew long distance was going to be tough with me going back home to California. So I was like, you know what, let's try an off season in Tampa and just see how it goes. And it was one of the best off seasons I've ever had. Being able to just train with guys that had the same type of goals and mindset as me, but also be with somebody who was making me better as a person. So it was really a culmination of everything in at the right time at the right spot. So I'm very thankful.
I know I definitely got more questions for that later. I definitely do. Don't let me forget about that. But I know that obviously growing up in California, I have not had the chance to get over there yet. I've never been, and I know like movies and just sports are very big out there. How is that different from Tampa? Like just how the city moves and just what it's like.
Yeah, I mean, where I grew up in San Diego's is kind of similar to Tampa as far as like you have kind of that laid back mentality lifestyle. You have your beaches. You have kind of that slower pace than a Los Angeles, right, or than a San Francisco. So at least that was what was nice about San Diego. But to your point, I mean, sports are just massive. You have so many different cities there that represent sports teams. You mentioned kind of like Hollywood and all of those things that kind of accumulate with just thinking about stars, right? And movies and TV, all that stuff is so it's definitely a fast pace that in that Los Angeles area. But I think the good thing about California is there's different cities bring different types of culture, different types of pace, and I think you'll get a good mix of people depending upon what city you go to. And I think that's what I liked about Southern California is you always have a good mix of cultures and backgrounds wherever you're pretty much at.
Okay, yeah, like I'm still trying to formulate how it looks. I know it's best that I actually get over there eventually. I should be
Yeah.
over there, I think, in the spring sometime. So I can't tell if I'm nervous or excited to go over there and finally see what it looks like.
No,
Finally,
I'm sure you'll love it. Just hopefully you get to check out Southern California before Northern California. I think it would be good at least that way you kind of experience it, and then both of them have their positives and negatives though.
see, I hear whoever's from the south, they say check out the south first. Whoever's from the north, they say check out the north first. Is there actually a correct way to explore California?
Well, I say check out the South because I think what most people's vision is like nice beaches, the restaurants, the weather, the fast pace of Los Angeles. That's kind of what you see via TV and all that stuff. So I don't want your mind to go in a different area.
Yeah.
You go to the Bay Area or something like that, or you go to Northern California, it's gonna be a different vibe than what you normally see on TV.
Mm. Okay. And then childhood wise, I know for me, DMV is like that's my home. I know the place that I used to live at doesn't necessarily exist anymore, but I always remember it and I like keep that in my heart. And there's a lot of people that come from my area of like PG County, Maryland. A lot of athletes, Kevin Durant, Victor Oladipo. There's a good amount of NBA, some MLB,
Mm.
boxing, Javante Davis, Baltimore area, but there's like a good amount of athletes and a lot of them are huge on ambition and motivation. Is there anything that you took from growing up in California that carried over to your professional years?
Yeah, I think there was a lot. I think just the idea that California is such a big area. There's always competition. You will get easily left behind in any category, and it doesn't have to just necessarily be sports. But because it's such a huge population of people and such a talented pool of people, you're always going to be competing, and I think that's what helped me along my journey, specifically in sports, is just knowing that hey, California is going to have some of the best of the best, and we kind of talked about that mix of people. You're going to get people from different backgrounds, so you're going to experience different things, and I think that's was something that helped me early on, being able to deal with different types of relationships, different types of communication, all that stuff played a huge played a huge part in me going to college, going to the next level in the pros. Um, but when you talk about ambition, I think a lot of that comes from inside, right? Like whatever experience you may have may spark some certain ambition. So I can't necessarily say that where I grew up sparked the ambition. But I think, seeing some of the things that I saw around me, like my father getting up at 5 a.m. every day, going to the gym before going to work, like showing me how to stay healthy, showing me how to take care of my body. I got to see my mom, who was an extremely athletic person at a young age, always pushing me to do extra. So I think a lot of my own ambition came from some of those experiences that I had specifically around me. And I can include, having the opportunity, and maybe this is an advantage of growing up in a place like San Diego, is seeing specific sports athletes. I had a relationship with Tony Gwynn, who played for the Padres. And I had a relationship with Bruce Bochy, who was a manager for the Padres too. So like getting to see athletes up close and thinking, okay, maybe it is a possibility that I can be a professional one day and I can do this down the road. That I think those are the things that I was left with ambition and motivation that carried me on.
Okay, dang, wow. Like you have me thinking about someone that I actually met from California that has somewhat of a similar story. That his name is Isaiah Wooden, and he is a running back. And I met him through Cliff Brown at Athlete Innovations.
Okay.
So the documentary that we record every beginning of the year about like the combine process. Met Isaiah, we call him Woo as his nickname. He is probably the fastest person I've ever met. Him and Cedric
Wow.
Jackson, probably one of the fastest people I've ever met. He's 5'9". 5'9", one of the fastest people I've ever met. Really cool dude. But hearing his story makes you just like, you kind of just are in awe. And seeing him be who he is on the field, you are impacted so much more by that just by knowing his story and where he's from. So hearing and
That's
knowing
cool.
that you had the example of watching your dad, obviously wake up at 5 a.m. and continue just to put work in. Ah, so much is going through my head right now. But for you, I know for Isaiah Wooden, he played football his entire life. That's
Hmm.
all he did. Football, grow up in Cali, and that's just what he'll tell you on the surface. When did baseball come in for you? And when did you know that you had the opportunity and chance to actually be a professional? When did it kick in? When it was like, maybe I could do this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I was probably around, freshman, sophomore year of high school when I realized that there was a future there. Um, I started playing baseball when I was, 7, 8 years old, but never really knew if I was talented enough until about freshman, sophomore year of high school, when you start getting some of those collegiate letters, opportunities to take visits, camps, and all that stuff. And I started taking it a little more seriously. I always loved basketball, and was my first love. I played football as well, played all three in high school, all the way up into my junior year. But I think once I hit kind of that sophomore year and started realizing, okay, these football players are getting a little strong for me, and these basketball players are getting a little too tall for me. I think baseball might be my niche.
Did you
And
play
and it was
basketball
a.
at one point?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Did you play basketball at one point?
Yes, yeah, I played basketball up until I was a junior in high school, and I played what I play small forward, and I loved basketball. That was my first love. But I'm 6 foot, and most of those guys, by the time you get into sophomore, junior year of high school, getting past 6'2", 6'3", and I wasn't able to dedicate as much time into other
Mm,
sports, and baseball came a little bit easier.
yeah.
So I think kind of just looking at an opportunity for a college scholarship, I was like, okay, baseball is going to be the right road to go. And so started dedicating more of that time, playing more games, putting more time into the cage, more time into ground balls, much more extra work, and I was excited about it. So that was about the time that I realized that it was going to be something special for me.
Mhm. So I know now that you went to UNLV. I've seen the campus. My grandma used to live in Vegas, but
Okay.
I know over here in Tampa, I've recorded for the University of Tampa baseball team, and so the weather is a little different over here in Tampa. Obviously, you know that now.
Yeah.
How is that in Las Vegas, knowing that it is extremely hot over there? Like, how was that just the environment? How does that go in mentally? You know, you're out there, it's hot. It's like,
Yeah.
how was that as a whole?
Yeah, it plays a huge factor. And it's not easy because you got to be mentally, I mean, just like here, you got to be mentally disciplined every time you go out there in the summer because you know you're just going to burn up, right? Like um but I think what was cool for me, and this is kind of went into where I picked to go to school, was wind was always a huge factor too, and it seemed like it was easy, not easy, but it was more beneficial to be a hitter in Vegas because balls would fly out of that stadium a lot of times. So I took that into consideration when it's picking a school. Um, but like anything else, like you got to get past the thought process of, the weather and all that stuff. Your job, for me, like my thought process was like I got drafted and I got drafted as a senior in high school, but I turned it down to go to college.
Okay.
And so my thought process was always like, okay, stay so focused because you've already been drafted. You do what you need to do. 3 years, you'll be drafted again. So
Yeah.
I really had like this locked in focus, to not let like outside factors get in the way of that. And I've seen that happen to a lot of players, and I've talked to a lot of major league players, and just how, you get to the field one day and it's 1:15 and you're like, man, I don't feel like playing today. And so those thoughts start to slip into your mind a little bit, and you just can't afford to let that happen if you know where you want to be. Because say that one game, it's 1:15, it's scorching out there. You tell yourself, man, today ain't it. And that's the day there's 15 major league scouts in the stands waiting to watch you.
Mm,
That's just an attitude you can't afford to have when you're trying to perform at the next level.
that makes sense. 115? Xavier,
Yeah, yeah,
I already can't do Florida heat. I cannot imagine 115.
yeah. That's that dry heat over there too.
And you're suited up.
Yeah.
Applause. My goodness. 115. Oh my goodness. I'm just trying to imagine it for myself. So I played soccer. And so of course I was outside most of the time.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Maryland. And so off season is usually futsal. It's like indoor. So it's just winter. Like 115 is mine.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know how you
different.
guys do it, man. With the helmets, just can't do it. So I got the shirt. You see the shirt?
Yeah,
I took the trip to PNC Park a couple months ago. Recommended
that's
from a
dope.
really close friend of mine. But it also sparked a thought of when you were talking about your one of your first hits, August 2016, PNC Park. What was going through your head? Just like I know you were on Miami. Just like what were your thoughts around that time, if you still remember? Because I know you look very different from that moment. But just
Yeah.
definitely from the perspective of an athlete that is playing professional baseball, and it's one of your first hits, knowing that was the beginning of a very long career. What was maybe something that you were just surprised about that you used to think that later in your career it's just like, it's just like nerves?
Yeah, no, man, that's a good question too. I think it was, you said August 20th. That's the day of my first major league home run. So that's something that I'll never forget. Right,
Mhm.
like that's something that'll always kind of stick into my head vividly. And you kind of asking me about, what sticks out, or what surprised me or whatever. I think one of the biggest things was I always felt like the major leagues was kind of like this pedestal that was going to be so tough, and that once I got there, it was going to be, the end all be all, right? And it was going to be like the toughest area in which I've ever played baseball, and it really didn't feel like that for me. It felt like, I had reached a certain area, but but I wanted to be great there. Like I felt like I belonged, and I felt like I wasn't overmatched. And I think that once you battle through the minor leagues for a long period of time and you finally taste the major leagues, I would assume that a lot of guys feel like, okay, I have to prove myself. I feel a little bit overmatched. I feel like
Mm,
this is the best competition. But I kind of felt like the game slowed down a little bit for me. And I didn't necessarily have the numbers that I wanted, but I felt like I was comfortable. And I think that's half the battle once you get to a specific place that you want to be. And that's not even just sports, right? Like if you are looking at getting to a dream, you want to feel comfortable wherever you are in that dream. So I think that's one of the things that kind of surprised me. And I think that day specifically, I just remember, the baseball coming off of my bat and like I didn't even feel it. It felt like I hit a cloud, and it was just like the bat was so smooth hitting the baseball and flying out of the yard. I just remember vividly thinking, man, I just hit my first major league home run. Like this is all I've been working for since I was 7, 8 years old. This is the only feeling that I've wanted to feel. This is the feeling that I've always dreamt about. So I remember thinking that like while I was rounding the bases and running like I was on cloud nine. You honestly, it's hard to remember all of those feelings just because like you're so in the moment and you're trying to be in the moment. But you're also trying to feel like, yo, this is what I do. Like this is I belong here. This is just a normal day, but it wasn't. Anytime you have that type of moment, it's always going to be special. And I just remember how my teammates reacted, and obviously my family after the game as well.
mm. So I know Ichiro Suzuki was your teammate, and he has been alive and playing 28 seasons of baseball. That's longer than I've been alive, honestly. And
Right.
to know
Yeah.
that name from someone that I personally have not played baseball that long. I played when I was a lot younger, machine pitch. But just to know a name like that, a household name, how is that having just a teammate like that around and knowing all his years of just like wisdom? How did that impact
Yeah.
you as a player and as a person?
Yeah, I think it's huge. Just because you're sitting and watching a Hall of Famer and you're a teammate with a Hall of Famer, and you get to see the everyday process of what it takes to be great, even at an older age, um, and how important routine is, how important nutrition, how important your body is, all those things, it just reinforces it. And you're always looking at these guys who have the longevity, right? Because it's cool to make it to the big leagues, but if you're able to stay there is the most rewarding thing. Guys that play 15 to 20 years, you're looking at, okay, what are the things that they're doing that make them special? And I
Mhm.
think a lot of it is just how their thought process is different. How they approach the game is different. Barry Bonds was my hitting coach too, and I'm always in awe of kind of just the way he talked about the game and the way he thought about hitting in general. So it just reminds you that people that are so great at what they do are almost on a different wavelength than the normal person and how they think. And you can learn from that. And I think that's the cool thing is like you can grasp that and you can apply it to your own game, and then you don't feel like okay, you're stuck in a box. You feel like okay, I can get creative with things. I can do things differently. It gives me more flexibility to learn in other ways. So I think that was one of the coolest things, and just being able to say that I played with a legend like that, is pretty cool.
That's insane. Like, 'cause I remember seeing them, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I grew up with there's some sort of bubble gum that was like super big, and just like all these little different baseball snacks that I would see him on. I would never really know like who this person is. We didn't have phones, we were too young to know. But of course,
Right, right,
these certain people on TV, like Ken Griffin Jr. and of course Ichiro. Um,
right.
oh man, um, I have a friend.
That's cool.
She does photography. Her name is Ava, and something that I didn't know. I mean, you probably do just from paying attention to detail with a sport that you can tell where the ball is going based off of what it sounds like when it comes off the bat. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
I'm
that's how
so
you
true.
That's how you know kind of if the where the ball is kind of being hit as a player. I think because sound travels faster than the ball, so you have an idea as to okay, well, where's that sound coming from? Even if you're in the stands, and you hear a sound and it's hit towards the right side and foul territory in the stands, like the right side is going to react faster just hearing it because it's coming closer to them.
Okay.
So yeah, that's definitely something that's definitely true, especially as a photographer or someone that's a videographer. You'll hear it before you even see it, probably most times.
Yeah, that's and it's interesting to hear only because that's something that I, as the camera person, have never actually paid attention to. I don't know if that's just like a skill thing or just inherited, but I know on her end from growing up around baseball, and she, God willing, she wants to become a MLB photographer, and I definitely think she will. But just
That's cool.
knowing that that's something that she just inherited over time, like she will
Right.
take a photo or know where to go before the ball actually gets there. And I
Mhm.
have to watch before I actually set up my camera. So just the advantage of that, all the time that she's put in, obviously with baseball games, has helped her.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool. Those are things that, yeah, I guess if you do it for a while, you'll learn that that's kind of how it works.
mhm. Personally, knowing that it takes a lot as an athlete just to stay on top of your regimen, your routine, was there any time that you can even remember? Maybe it was just hard to explain that to people because I know athletes they have to be on a specific regimen. You got to be consistent to
Yeah.
continue to get better at your craft. Got to stay focused, and it takes a lot depending on the sport that you're in. And I know me personally, growing up, the schools that I went to were very sports oriented, and so after going to college, I didn't get the chance to play collegiate sports. And so me being very on top of my schoolwork, my grades, my hobbies, it was very abnormal to I guess people around me. Were there any
Yeah.
moments like that in your life to where maybe you just simply appreciated for what God has put you through, or maybe you appreciated the people that you got to meet to where you could see how important it is to wake up at 5 and just get things done for certain reasons of, is there any moments in your life that you have definitely remembered like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of when I first got to when I first got drafted and went to minor league baseball, like guys talk so much about a routine. We would have Albert Pujols, who is in all of Hall of Famer. You know, at the big league level, he would come down and then talk to the minor leaguers and just talk about how important routine was, how important it was to take your craft seriously. And I remember him specifically saying, like, hey, some of you guys are going to try to come take my job. And he said, you're going to have to rip the jersey off of my back before you take my job. And it reminded me of how serious professional sports is, because now you're leaving college in which things were getting paid for, whether it's your parents, whether it's a scholarship, whatever. But now you have to take care of your own business. Like, you're getting paid, and then if you don't have a job, or if you're not playing right, you're not producing, you will no longer have that job, right? And you don't have the opportunity to make money. So I think hearing from a guy like Albert Pujols how seriously he took his craft was something that really stood out to me as a player. And it made me want to be more detailed. It made me want to make sure that I dedicated time towards doing that much more extra. It made me think about, okay, what's the next guy doing that I'm not doing? And how can I make time to do that? My thought process just kind of like honed in a little bit more when I heard guys speak like that. I remember there would be guys that would come and speak, and this is the advantage of kind of being in a great organization coming through the minor leagues with the Cardinals, is like we would get a lot of speakers. I remember we had a Navy SEAL come in and kind of talk about some of the stuff that he had gone through in going to wars and battling different countries and all this stuff, and just like what it took to be a Navy SEAL. And it reminded me of like how appreciative I am to play a sport for a living. So I never took that for granted. And like the first thing I remember my dad saying when I got drafted is, "Don't have any regrets." And I took that as like, hey, if I looked back on my career, I better make sure that I didn't wish I did something extra. I wish I did this or I wish I did that. And so I took that. That hit me very seriously, and not just from a detailed sports, practice aspect. It also made me think about like relationship building, making sure that my teammates, I'm being a good teammate, making sure I'm loving on people, making sure that I'm sharing my faith, making sure that wherever I go, I'm being a light, because I don't want to look back and say, man, I missed that opportunity. So there were a lot of moments like that. But when you ask me that question, those are kind of the things that stick out of my head.
Yeah. When did you actually get, I guess, into your faith? Did you grow up in the church? Did you have your, mom drag you to church on Sundays and stuff like that? Or when did you personally get into your faith?
Yeah, my mom dragged me to church early on. Ever since I can remember. But I remember being like, I want to say like 11 or 12 years old when I felt like the spirit just hit me one day in church, and I was like bawling like a baby. And, as 11 and 12-year old, oftentimes you're not having those emotional feelings. So I knew it was something different. And just hearing about the word of Christ and learning on a daily basis, because my mom spoke life to me and my brother on a daily basis, that someone died for me. Like, I think that's something that I continued to contemplate. And I got baptized when I was 12 years old. But also, you go through ups and downs in which you're learning along the way. You're learning how to be a good follower of Christ. And but one thing I can always say is, my faith has always been a huge part of everything that I do. Through my ups, through my downs, I remember who's given me every single opportunity I've ever had, and I'm very grateful that I was raised in the church, and that even when there's days you stray away, God is always waiting for you to come back, and that's something I'm extremely grateful for.
Were there any? I mean, this is more so. This is like a thought question. I of course have a list because I know you told me to do my research. Had to, but now I'm just starting. I'm just starting. I will obviously like to know from my own walk, and like hearing these
Yeah.
conversations from someone who is obviously older than I am and has been through a lot more things, has seen a lot more things, even in just sports, life, family. Of course, I would like to know that because I know that hearing from other people, especially that may know more or been through certain things that you may have to face, you can have a lot more wisdom and understanding before you may face it. Just so you don't
Hmm.
hit a wall. That's
Yeah.
just being mindful. But
Yeah.
were there any pivotal moments in your life or career that have actually increased your faith?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one that kind of sticks out to me amongst others is when I was a junior in college, and I had already made the assumption that I was going to be drafted and be a professional baseball player. And I started going out a little more than I probably should have been, and I was still underage at the time. I was 20 years old. So I'm going to clubs, going to bars, and it's kind of like the thing to do in Vegas, right? Everybody's got a fake ID and all that stuff. So going to school there was very easy for me to get access to do things I probably shouldn't be doing. So I remember being at a bar one night, and telling somebody, maybe a group of girls, that I was already a professional. Obviously, I'm still in college, but I'm telling them I'm a professional baseball player. I'm so and so, using somebody else's name. I'm on the Padres, um, and didn't not thinking anything of it. Just my own ego, right? And then the next day, I remember going to practice, and I had a coach come and said, "Hey X, I need you in my office." And it was the head coach, and he said, "Take a seat." So I sat down in his office. He said, "I got to play you this," and it was a voice message. And long story short, a voice message from a husband of one of the women that were at the bar had mentioned, hey, you have a player in you at UNLV, a baseball player in Xavier Scruggs, who's out here in the streets telling people that he's a professional. He should be kicked off the team. This is not how you represent being a rebel, and kind of going on and on about how I should be dismissed from the team. And that was one of those moments that hit me because my coach was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know that this is the kind of stuff that ultimately does get guys removed from the team. This is the type of things that gets guys kicked out of school, and you can't afford to do this, especially if you call yourself a leader for this team." And so he told me he was going to play the message for my teammates. And that's when I kind of just got emotional. I was like, man, that's the last thing I want is to, to act like I'm a leader, but then be doing this stuff on the side. And so he played the message in front of the whole team. He used me as an example, which was rightly so, because obviously you don't want other players doing it. And I wouldn't want any other players doing it. And, and it made me come to a crossroads to say, wait a minute, I'm a junior. I know I have this opportunity to get drafted, but I'm acting in a way that could easily give me an opportunity or take away any opportunity for me to play professionally. So that was one of those moments that kind of like was an eye-opening experience for me. That was like, hey, you better kick it into gear, get back focused to doing what you're supposed to be doing. This ain't playtime, this ain't, go out and have fun. It's no, let's lock in on what you're supposed to be doing and why you're here. So that was definitely one of those moments that strengthened my own kind of attitude, my own faith in what I'm supposed to be doing, and was a reminder of, of what I need to be focused on.
Thank you for sharing that, man. Jeez.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That reminded me of something that is very close to my heart. Surprisingly, the documentary "Last Chance U" from Netflix, and
Yeah.
that's something that I honestly I watch over and over. I watch every single year at the end of the year each year. So I used to watch that in high school, obviously when it first came out.
Mm.
Being an athlete at the time, I loved the documentary in a different light, in a different way because I was playing sports. But what I took from it was that the people and the athletes that were in the show, they really had a last chance. Like just they're on their last chance, you know.
Right.
You usually tell the people that are watching or just the school or the school knows what they
Yeah.
maybe have done at their D1 college. You know the show. But what impacted me the most was like, okay, I'm in a position where I may have multiple chances, or I just have a different chance than they do. I may have like a better foot forward in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why would I jeopardize that? You know, like that would kind of give me the extra push and extra motivation of like
Yes.
I also do not need to be playing around, or I could be in a position where it's more stressful. You know, I really got to let shit, just to
Right. Right.
continue to just use my opportunities as best as I possibly could.
Right. Yep.
Um,
I love that. I love
yeah.
that. And I think that's kind of a focus that, different things will bring you. We first started this conversation. I was kind of talking about like the experiences that happen to you just as a person. Every experience is something that is meant to strengthen you, and help you, not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental, spiritual standpoint. And I'm a big believer in that.
Mhm. As a family man, you're huge on family, and I know I watch your content. Obviously, being a content person,
That's love.
I stay tuned in, and so I know you guys take a lot of family trips, and I see like how your kids are. They're very energetic. They seem to be very loving kids. With your schedule now, kind of knowing just like where you have to be during the week or during the month,
Yeah.
during the baseball season. Like, is there anything else, of course, besides the faith and scripture, church, all of that, that you may continue to remind yourself on a daily basis just to keep everything together?
Yeah, I think kind of the biggest thing is just like what are the priorities every day, right? Like a lot of people talk about kind of, whether that be kind of, what is it called? Like storyboarding or kind of having your dream board or whatever. I think my focus is just like every day wake up with certain priorities. What am I trying to get done? What's going to help me not just for today, but what's going to help me 5 years down the line, 7 years down the line. I think so many people are so impatient, which is easy to be, right? Like we want everything right now. We believe that, we should have a 30, 60, 90-day plan for what we want to do. But excuse me, but I think also you have to be focused on what can I do on a daily basis that's going to get me to where I want to be 5, 7 years down the line. Because those things take patience, and people who have patience, they move different, and I think that that's important. There's no feeling like you're missing out on something, and I think living in the moment is important. So I think kind of like prioritizing what's important for today that'll help incrementally push me to where I want to be down the line is kind of something that helps me stay kind of locked in on what I need to do. Because also like there's no, and I say priority for today because tomorrow's not promised, right? Like, so I want to make sure that whatever it is that I want to make important today gets done. Because I don't know what's going to happen. So I try to line my day up kind of like that. I'm not super organized as like I need to do this at 5, 6, 7 a.m. And no, it's just, hey, what are my priorities today, and how much time can I allot getting them done as soon as possible?
Okay, yeah, you see in my face. I'm like, I'm listening to it all. I'm soaking this in. I need this for me, and I'm pretty sure other people that are athletes utilize it themselves. Me being an individual, I can always think back to maybe I was like 17, 18, where I never thought I would get injured. I never thought I'd be injured in the way that I was, to
Mm,
where I had to stop. Like there was no cure necessarily like for the injury that I had. Like it was just going to get worse
yeah,
regardless. So that for me was a crazy pivotal moment. It was just like, okay, how do I still take all the ambition from a sport I technically didn't get to say goodbye to in the way that I wanted to, and put
yeah,
it into something else that I also love? And still to this day, like the last time was 2018. So that's what, 6 years? Feels like forever.
yeah,
6 years later, I'm still figuring out those little things. Like, okay, it's okay to wake up at 5 a.m. every day. It's okay to still just like, yeah, just to get certain things out. It's okay to like work on something for a certain amount of hours. Just consistency. It's still a job. It's still, putting your best foot forward and ambition and
yeah,
things you love creatively, and just kind of like just working through all of that, no matter what anyone else
yeah.
around me kind of says. I think my last and final question, which actually just hit me. You mentioned earlier that you lost your dad. Sorry to hear that. Was that at a
That
young
I, that I
age?
what?
Did you
I'm
lose your?
sorry. No, no, no. I still have my dad in my life. Very
Okay,
thankful.
God, thank God. I was like, what? I heard that earlier, and I was like, how did I miss that? Okay,
Uh,
okay. Jeez, my fault. But
you good?
with that, I guess growing up with your dad being as on point as he was on like his regimen,
Yeah.
how did that cross over with you becoming a father? What are like I guess the biggest keynotes that you took from being the kid with a father like that in your fatherhood now?
Yeah, he was the prime example, and I'm grateful because I know a lot of people don't have their fathers in their life, and I see kind of the impacts of that through different people. But I think seeing what hard work looks like, seeing what dedication looks like, seeing someone who's motivated by their family, um, it allows me to kind of take those same aspects and apply them, almost kind of what we were talking about, just like um, understanding the priorities. When I feel like when I know my family is a priority, and of course it's faith, family, and then sports or my profession. I think understanding those things kind of makes everything easier to live in the moment and to be smart about my decision making, and to not be selfish, right? Like every decision that I make is kind of surrounds this idea of selflessness. And going back to our conversation about faith, seeing that in my own father, it reminds me that, hey, sometimes I need to take a step back and remind myself, I need to put others in front of whatever I want to do. And that's a lot of being a father, is like you're making those sacrifices, and ultimately you'll never regret making those sacrifices. You'll never say, man, I wish I didn't go out there with my son an hour before the game and play catch with him and work on some ground balls and put some work in. Or I'll never say, man, I wish I didn't read with my kids like an hour before they go to sleep. Like all that stuff, you know, it turns out to be investment in something special, and it's your family. So I guess seeing that from him and getting a prime example was cool for me, because it was like, okay, now I have a blueprint. I have something to work off of. I know my father wasn't perfect. I know nobody is, but now I can learn from something and continue to apply it to my own life. So, man, it's just special, and I don't take for granted, because I know that's something that not everybody gets. You know, whether it be a mom or a dad.
Yeah, thank you. You don't even know what you're doing, man. Like, just thank you for your time. Thank you for
Oh,
your
absolutely.
advice, wisdom. Thank you for this. Shout out to J Mike, just because.
Yeah,
But
shout out to J Mike. Yeah,
those are
our
all the
boy.
questions that I have. Do you have any advice for any baseball players that are on the come up, that just may be in that time period of either
Yeah.
struggling with their faith, maybe they're just struggling with self-esteem and confidence in their sport? Do you have any advice to tell them just to keep going and keep them motivated?
Yeah, I think my advice to baseball players is the same as I would advise to any athlete, any normal human being that may not even be playing sports, is to just not compare yourself to anybody else. So that's on any level. If that's your walk, you know, you can't compare your walk with Jesus at like anybody else. Everybody's going to be in a different phase in their own walk. If that's in sports, I can't compare my body to anybody else's, because I'm going to have my own strengths and I'm going to have my own weaknesses. You know, and I think we're just always in this style of, or this lifestyle of comparison, and it's tough to get away from, because it's like hits us in the face every day with social media, um and everything we see on TV and everything surrounding us. But like, if we just stay focused on putting one foot in front of the other and making ourselves the best version of ourselves, like down the road, we'll look back and be like, man, I came a long way. Because ultimately, you waste time comparing yourself to somebody else. It doesn't help you. It doesn't ultimately motivate you. It gives you the wrong thoughts. And like, I'm all about making sure that, you know, you don't waste time, because we only get a certain amount of time on this earth, and most of that time should not be spent comparing ourselves to somebody else.
Huge, huge. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you,
Oh
Xavier.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you
no
for,
problem at all.
and I think that is a wrap.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you for your
Thanks
time,
for thanks for having me.
for sure. Anytime. Thank you for that. I know you got to get back to your floors, but
Yeah, my mic over here took a
I see
spill
it
over here earlier. I was like, what's going on?
keep falling. I'm